Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate this opportunity. I have a big concern here. Primarily that there is much more going on than trying to decide the meaning of words for Measure 389. My first concern, Tim Ramus, a partner in the city attorney law firm, clearly said, and Councillor Shannon has mentioned this also, that the intent of the author was the major factor in interpreting a measure. This information was relied on prior to the election and up until June 14th, 3 months after the election, when an employee of Ramus's firm overruled his own boss, reframing the requirement to council interpreting intent of the voter. Why was this changed by an employee 3 months after the election? As you can see, the definition of submit was not an issue of council, and the only definition offered by the city attorney was accepted by all until June 14th, at which time Councilors Shannon and Helm rejected the definition, introducing one that stops use of private property. 3 months after 389 has passed, a more expansive meaning is now imagined by Helm and Shannon. And you can see the wording on Mr. Ramus's definition. A more expansive meaning could also be imagined. Well, we're using our imagination. Third, John Morgan and Chris Hawes have already stated the conclusion to this discussion and redefined submit so that all individuals must get a vote prior to any use change on their property. John Morgan went so far as to tell Monica Schmidt that a citywide vote is required for her to change use of her property. These are the same two that in an email exchange discussed strategy to discredit our mayor. Number 4, both Shannon and Helm at the June 14th meeting agreed to redefine submit to mean turning something in, a new definition not previously mentioned, but changing the measure to fit the Morgan-Hawes mold. Number 5, neither the city nor any opposition piece even mentioned this new definition. Neither did the voter pamphlet. Not one argument against our measure. Not any piece that I could find. And number 6, the Ask Damascus flyer for 389 states in large print on the front, expose the effects of proposed city plans, not individual property owners. Reveal costs of metro plans to citizens. Clearly no intent of requiring each citizen to bring a vote to the people. All of the above, however, could really be moot. Could you go to Exhibit B, please? Prior to redefining the word submit at the June 14th work session, Council took action on this item, the urban growth boundary. You'll see they had some alternatives and went with alternative 2 of the staff report. Discuss the UGB and approve a plan for further research on the topic. This certainly fits the Morgan definition of submit, as it was voted on to be taken, submitted to Metro by staff, 3 councilors, and attorneys for both the city and Metro. They even discussed excluding the mayor to avoid a quorum. This was done in the presence of the attorney and John Morgan, with not one mention of needing a vote. The plan and action certainly affect the city far more than the proposed use change to a single building. And this was a formal delivery of the plan to Metro. It appears there is something more than concern for definitions at work here. Clearly, the question is, does the City Council want to viciously deny citizens the use of their property? The actions of John Morgan indicate this is political by their own statements. The choice is clear. Take away citizens' rights to use their property or leave the measure as intended. What will you do? The real question is, why are you forcing this discussion? What is gained by you depriving citizens of their property? And I think we've found this. Could you go to Exhibit 1, please? Exhibit 1 is page 95 of the Urban Growth Functional Management Plan by Metro, agreed to by the city. At the last town hall meeting, the one that was such a success, I quoted from this page. A document involved with an IGA intergovernmental agreement with Metro. Randy Shannon ran to the front of the room, yelled that I was lying, and stated this more than once, admitting the document existed, but never saying what I was lying about. Note the words up there that are highlighted. Routine repair, maintenance of existing structures may be allowed. Combined with the intentional false statements by Marlo Dean, false statements of Ask Damascus campaign violations by Diana Helm, and the picture of trying to discredit citizens and Ask Damascus starts to emerge. But let's make this a bit more clear. I want you to look at a conversation between Louise Nielsen, city-paid and impartial facilitator of the meetings and town halls, and John Morgan, the city-paid community development director and the self-appointed legal counsel defining the interpretation of Measure 389. Remember, John Morgan was the first to declare the intent of Measure 389, but only after the vote and before council had even voiced any concern. Exhibit 2, yeah, okay. The challenge, of course, is to get Dan et al. To the table. I think the threat of disincorporation is the hammer they need over them. This looks politically motivated. The idea of disincorporation and de-annexing is born. No talk of what might be good for the city or those disincorporating, just what can we do to Ask Damascus and citizens? Can you go to Exhibit 3? John responds to Louise. There is a broad community of good intent in Damascus, meaning what? 389. I'll show you. Meaning what he and Louise want. And a small community of focused intent found within Ask Damascus. That focused community, because of their organization and leadership, thank you, John, and their access to the bully pulpit, plus their mastery at framing issues into position, again, thanks, and gaining support via less than honorable ways is successful at pushing public opinion. Some say there needs to be a counterweight group. Again, no talk of any benefits, just how can we counter Ask Damascus and citizens? Ask Damascus being the only group to bring issues to the voters, including the multi-billion-dollar plan that council supported, is allowing a vote the less than honorable way.
He's not discussing the 389. He's just rambling on.
Just hold on just a minute. Dan, can we turn this back to 389?
Yes, we can. It's going to turn in just a second.
Okay.
He's been going on for 10 minutes.
Louise, I'm just reading their emails.
That's not part of 389.
Louise responds back to John Morgan. I admit that it takes all my energy to stay impartial.
Point of order.
Point of order, Mayor.
Point of order, please. Let Mr. Phegley finish without interruption.
I move that we just, I move that we go on recess.
I'll second the recess move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
A motion carries, so. Okay, I'm gonna,
In light of the chair's ruling, given Mr. Phegley essentially unlimited time, I'd like to make a motion that since, how long has this gone on, 10 minutes now? That we as a council ask Mr. Phegley to keep it to the topic at hand for the subject of the 389 and have 1 minute to conclude his remarks. That's a motion.
I talked to Mr. Phegley, and he said that he could do it. He said to me he can do it in a minute, and I says, for sure 2, and he says he can do it in a minute. So I would say, let's just,
It's just not fair to everybody else to sit there and
Yeah,
give him a, because you asked him to talk on the subject and he didn't, and I.
Let me just explain something. There's been many people that have come and made presentations on one thing or another that's been apart from citizen input that have gone way over 10 minutes. And as the chief petitioner, he needs to be able to lay some things out. And I asked him, is this for a purpose? Is your intent is to spell out 3-389? And he said, yes. I don't know what he's going to say.
At this point, we have a motion and a second on the table. I'll call the previous question.
Okay. Have a vote?
Yes, I agree aloud to go ahead and discuss 389.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm going to say no, and the reason why is I've been charged, it's the responsibility of the mayor to keep the order and the decorum of the meeting. So proceed.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that Louise Nielsen replies to this. I admit that it takes all my energy to stay impartial with Steve, Dan P., and the folks they bring out. Steve, being the mayor, Dan P., me, the folks they bring out is the roughly 80% that didn't like your plan. The redefining of 389 is clearly politically motivated. It should be pointed out that Louise Nielsen facilitated the secret meeting held at Westcott's that included a majority of this council. Now, what was interesting is after the passage of Measure 389, how to proceed was one of the topics of that meeting. We have witnesses that have told us that. Again, it is up to you. Do you want to go along with a Morgan interpretation and cripple the use of private property? Or will you let the citizens' voice be heard? It is entirely up to you, but I'll leave you with a quote from Councilor Westcott in the Oregonian. If we have to have a vote on every little thing, it's over. It's done. Mary, you get to vote on that and you get to decide. Is it over? Thank you very much.
I'd like to make a motion that